Imagine waking up tomorrow and the person beside you, the love of your life, is suddenly gone forever. The empty space next to you isn't just quiet, it's deafening. A sickening dread crashes into your gut, robbing you of breath, energy, and stability. If you think I'll handle it when it happens, brace yourself. This careless approach could devastate your health in unimaginable ways. Wait even 5 minutes to confront this harsh truth, and you risk spiraling into a catastrophic physical and emotional breakdown, perhaps even a fatal stress-induced heart attack. Losing your life partner is not merely emotional agony, it's a violent assault on your physical body. Your heart pounds harder, your immune system collapses, and despair drags you toward life-threatening depression. You may believe you're tough enough to handle anything, but no past crisis compares to this nightmare. Imagine never again experiencing your morning coffee together or sharing whispered conversations in bed. One ignored warning sign, one day spent in denial, and suddenly you're battling not only unbearable grief, but escalating health dangers you never saw coming. Think this is exaggerated? Doctors worldwide have named it the terrifying widowhood effect, a medically documented reality where seniors' mortality rates skyrocket in the first months after losing a spouse. The World Health Organization revealed shocking data in a 2017 report confirming older adults mourning a spouse frequently end up hospitalized, succumbing to major cardiac episodes or debilitating illnesses. Ignore these risks even briefly, and the silent destruction occurring within your body could be irreversible. Imagine this nightmare becoming your reality tomorrow. Your spouse suddenly gone, leaving you utterly unprepared. The immediate instinct might be to isolate, to close the door on the world, and drown in sorrow. But this reaction could be as deadly as staying outside during a raging hurricane. Fortunately, there's a lifeline. 6 essential survival strategies that you must learn right now today, even if the loss seems distant. These critical first steps prevent your initial shock from turning deadly. You might be wondering why such terrifying urgency. My partner and I are fine. Because the moment your spouse takes their final breath, a deadly countdown begins. You'll face a flood of critical decisions, each capable of stabilizing or utterly destroying your health. In this vulnerable state, your body is defenseless. Your immune system falters. Your heart strains under immense emotional pressure. Missing meals, sleepless nights, ignored symptoms. These could swiftly push you toward an irreversible health crisis. Knowing precisely how to react is not just smart, it could literally mean the difference between life and death. In this shocking expose, we'll walk you through the devastating aftermath of losing your spouse. You'll learn how ignoring your grief today plants emotional bombs destined to explode violently months down the line. You'll discover why even the healthiest person faces severe physical risks after loss. We'll show you simple daily actions, lifelines that could protect you from sinking beneath overwhelming despair. Tragically, many believe they can postpone these measures or handle everything with one quick call to family. This dangerous misconception can trigger lethal blood pressure spikes, crippling depression, or even a sudden cardiac arrest. You'll hear chilling real-life case studies seniors who either survived or succumbed to this perilous journey. Meet an 82-year-old who narrowly avoided emotional collapse by maintaining a strict daily connect and check routine. Witness how a 78-year-old woman nearly died because grief led her to neglect critical medications. Their stark experiences are cautionary tales revealing the grim realities when you underestimate your vulnerability after a spouse's death. Stay tuned for the critical segment everyone overlooks, rebuilding your shattered identity. Most seniors mistakenly assume the worst ends after the funeral, but losing your spouse means losing part of yourself. The person who shared your name, dreams, and future. Without practical, immediate strategies, you risk falling into prolonged isolation, drastically elevating your chances of heart disease, strokes, and cognitive collapse. Stick with me, because rebuilding who you are is essential to not just surviving, but reclaiming a life worth living. There's a sinister reason medical research consistently links bereavement with increased hospital admissions among seniors. According to Dr. Michael Greger, Nutrition Facts.org 2020, chronic stress from loss drastically increases inflammation, disrupts nutritional intake, and ignites a chain reaction of declining health. This message isn't a scare tactic, it's an urgent wake-up call. Ignore it, and your risk of an actual heart attack is not just a grim story. It's a documented medical crisis waiting to happen. Before diving into those life-saving steps, let's ground this threat with a hauntingly real clinical scenario. Picture a seemingly healthy 79-year-old retiree convinced he's strong as an ox. Yet within 2 weeks of his wife's sudden death, he suffers terrifying chest pains. Dismissing them as grief symptoms, he soon learns it's a dangerous arrhythmia triggered by emotional shock. Neglecting food, losing weight rapidly, and abandoning his usual activities nearly cost him his life. This chilling story is shockingly common. Now let's uncover how to stop it from becoming yours. Transition: a true or composite clinical story. Let's call this patient Charles. He spent 4 decades next to his wife, Margaret, who was the central pillar of his life. When Margaret died, Charles went numb. Instead of seeking help or sharing his anguish, he buried himself in errands, mostly the business side of death, like funeral arrangements and settling accounts. But behind the scenes, his blood pressure climbed, his arrhythmia worsened, and he was too exhausted to cook even a basic meal. One morning, Charles nearly collapsed on his porch while trying to pick up the mail. The emergency room doctor found no underlying heart disease but noticed dangerously high stress hormones. In essence, Charles's body was under siege by grief. Had he not received medical attention, doctors theorized he might have suffered a full-blown cardiac crisis. This is how quickly the aftermath of losing your partner can spiral out of control. In many cases, it's not immediate death that gets you. It's the cumulative deterioration of your physical resilience. As an award-winning physician journalist, I've encountered countless Charles and Margaret stories, couples who live a seemingly peaceful life until that devastating loss triggers a chain reaction of health decline. According to the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health 2019 study on grief and aging widowhood, can amplify the occurrence of stress-related illnesses, including elevated risk of cardiovascular incidents if left unmanaged. That's precisely why you must take notice now, before tragedy blindsides you, or at least so you'll be somewhat prepared if it does. People frequently ask, isn't grief natural? Won't I just ride it out? Yes, grief is natural, but the intersection of grief and physical health demands deliberate proactive measures. Scientists explain that when we're faced with an unprecedented emotional blow, our body translates that stress into biochemical signals, elevating cortisol and other stress hormones. In older adults, especially those with pre-existing conditions, this hormonal cascade can set the stage for hypertension, arrhythmias, or other critical issues. Natural or not, ignoring it is courting disaster. Now that you have a glimpse of the storm's ferocity, you might feel a deep chill creeping up your spine. Use that sense of alarm to drive you forward. Grief can be an invisible predator waiting for you to let your guard down, but you have an opportunity to shield yourself by laying the groundwork today. Over the next section, we'll dissect 6 vital steps that could be the difference between emerging from this with your health intact or stumbling into a long-term crisis of heart and mind. Science: how grief affects your body and mind. The initial wave of grief is emotional, but the ripple effect is physiological. When the person you've shared a life with disappears, your body registers it like a shockwave. Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health researchers have noted that older adults face a remarkable surge in stress hormones following bereavement, akin to being in a near-constant fight-or-flight mode. In younger individuals, the system might recover quickly. For seniors, that prolonged stress state can weaken the immune system, elevate blood pressure, and invite a range of health complications. Consider your immune function as an army inside your body. When you lose a spouse, it's as if a large portion of your troops get taken out of position, leaving the fortress exposed. This makes it easier for chronic ailments to worsen. If you suffer from diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, or any heart condition, heightened grief-related stress can tip you over the edge. According to the WHO's global health data, up to 50% of bereaved seniors report a dramatic uptick in medical complaints within 6 months of losing their partner. Another critical area is your cognitive health. Studies show that extreme stress can disrupt mental clarity, leading to confusion or short-term memory lapses. That's why it's dangerously easy to make severe financial or legal mistakes in the aftermath of a spouse's death. When you're grieving, your mental bandwidth is limited. You might miss important deadlines for insurance claims, or you might sign documents without fully grasping their implications. The confusion you feel isn't just sadness. It's a physiological byproduct of overloaded stress circuits. Sleep deprivation is another massive factor. Many widowed individuals can't sleep through the night due to sorrow or anxiety. When the body fails to repair and reset during deep sleep, the risk of health breakdown grows exponentially. Chronic insomnia is linked with heightened blood pressure, impaired glucose tolerance, and a weakened immune system. Taken together, these factors form the perfect breeding ground for severe health problems, including the potential for heart attack or stroke. If you think none of this applies to you because you're mentally strong, be cautious. The stiff upper lip approach often leads to bottled up emotions that eventually explode, sometimes literally in the form of acute health emergencies. We all have physical limits. The death of a spouse is a unique kind of trauma that can test even the toughest minds. Recognizing the physical dimension of your grief is not weakness, it's wisdom. By doing so, you're taking the first step towards safeguarding your health. The 6 essential steps to prevent collapse. Let's now examine each critical strategy. In the upcoming sections, I will detail the emotional underpinnings, the physical ramifications, and the practical actions that can truly shield you. Remember, none of these steps involve abandoning your physician's advice. On the contrary, consult your physician remains an unbreakable rule. These steps are meant to complement medical guidance, not replace it. Step 1. Allow yourself to feel fully. Why is feeling your emotions the first step? Because suppressed grief rots in the corners of your psyche, eventually re-emerging in more destructive ways. Some seniors try to be stoic, refusing to shed tears. They assume crying is a sign of frailty. However, it's more accurate to view crying, or honest emotional release, as a cleansing mechanism. According to a study in the Journal of Behavioral Medicine 2018, participants who acknowledged and expressed their grief openly reported lower rates of stress-related physical symptoms than those who tried to repress it. Picture an 80-year-old named Lillian who lost her partner unexpectedly. For weeks, she forced herself to maintain a cheerful facade, believing this was what her late husband would have wanted. She refused to speak about him or look at his photos. Slowly, insomnia set in, followed by increasing irritability and eventually severe weight loss. Doctors found no underlying medical cause, only the insidious accumulation of unspoken grief. When she finally allowed herself to sob and confide in a counselor, her appetite and sleep gradually improved. So what does feeling fully look like in practical terms? It can be as simple as dedicating 15 minutes each day to reflect, journal, or even talk out loud to a photograph of your spouse. Some might find comfort in joining a support group or practicing gentle mindfulness techniques. The focus is on giving your grief a constructive outlet instead of denying its existence. The irony is that facing the pain often reduces its overwhelming hold on you faster than running away from it. A crucial warning: don't push yourself to move through grief on schedule. Each person has a different timeline for emotional healing. Cramming your sorrow into a rigid framework because family or friends are pressuring you is a recipe for future breakdowns. Let your tears flow. Let your questions surface. You're not broken because you're mourning. You're human. By allowing yourself to acknowledge that heartbreak, you start preventing the emotional isolation that can make you physically sick. If you're hesitant to open up to friends or relatives, consider professional counseling. Therapists trained in grief support understand the delicate balance between healthy expression and damaging rumination. They can guide you through coping mechanisms, teach you how to regulate the anxiety that might be keeping you awake at night, and help you see a pathway toward emotional stabilization. The main point is that ignoring how you feel is like ignoring a leaking roof. It will get worse. Step 2. Connect with others. Immediately, humans are social creatures, and isolation can become a silent killer, especially after a life-altering event like losing your spouse. The Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health repeatedly emphasizes that seniors who minimize social contact following bereavement face higher risks of depression and even certain medical complications. Why? Because your emotional state directly affects your physiology. Regular conversation, shared meals, or gentle companionship can lower stress levels, stabilize your mood, and remind your body that it's not in constant crisis. Let's examine a real story. June, age 77, lost her husband after a prolonged illness. At first, she was overwhelmed by visitors' phone calls and condolence messages. When that initial wave of support died down, she found herself alone most days. She was too proud to ask for help, believing she'd be a burden. But after 2 weeks of near-total isolation, her body responded with panic attacks and insomnia, culminating in an ambulance ride when she thought she was having a heart attack. Tests revealed it was severe anxiety triggered by social withdrawal and compounded grief. How do you connect quickly without exhausting yourself? You can begin with short scheduled check-ins, a daily phone call, a coffee break with a neighbor, or a chat with a trusted relative. If that feels overwhelming, start smaller. Send a text, write a letter, join a local support group. Your circle doesn't have to be huge. Even one or two dependable people can serve as a lifeline. The key is consistency. Many seniors maintain a buddy list of friends to call at least once a day. If you're without family nearby, investigate community resources such as senior centers, religious communities, or grief support circles. Some organizations even offer volunteers who specifically engage with those in mourning. The point is to act before the silence grows too deep. Loneliness and despair can feed on each other, turning a temporary slump into a vicious cycle that's hard to escape. There's also a vital online component. Modern technology allows video calls, chat groups, and social networks to help you stay connected. While digital contact isn't a perfect substitute for face-to-face interactions, it's far better than complete isolation. In addition, if you're technologically hesitant, many libraries or community centers offer classes on using smartphones or computers. Don't let age be an excuse. Embrace whatever method keeps you engaged with others, because it could literally prevent a health spiral that might lead to further complications. Step 3. Organize critical documents before it's too late. The logistical avalanche that follows a spouse's death is daunting. You'll be bombarded with paperwork, legal obligations, insurance claims, and financial accounts that all need tending. If you postpone this chore until you're deeper into grief, you risk making costly errors, missing deadlines, or losing benefits. Worse yet, confusion can escalate your sense of panic, raising blood pressure and compounding stress levels. That's why it's essential to assemble key documents as early as possible. This step might sound cold or businesslike, but it's actually a way to protect your future. Think about everything that ties your spouse's life to your joint existence: wills, insurance policies, mortgage papers, deeds, pension, statements, military service records, if applicable, marriage certificates, and banking details. Having a secure folder, physical or digital, with copies of these documents can ease the chaos. When you're disoriented by sorrow, a straightforward reference can be a godsend. A cautionary example is Jeff, 74, who assumed he'd have endless time to sort out his late wife's estate. Grief paralyzed him for weeks, and he couldn't muster the energy to open the mail. Important deadlines for pension adjustments passed, resulting in financial penalties. On top of that, confusion about joint accounts led to bills going unpaid. When he finally tried to catch up, the mountain of bureaucracy was overwhelming, forcing him to hire expensive legal help. How should you handle the process in a manageable way? Begin by writing a checklist of every type of document you might need: official identification, financial records, insurance details, property documents, passwords for online accounts, and so forth. Next, gather them in a single secure location. Some people rely on a fireproof box or a password-protected digital folder. If you're not computer savvy, ask a trusted friend or family member to help you back up digital copies on a USB drive or a cloud service. Once you have everything organized, consult an attorney or financial advisor to confirm that you haven't missed anything critical. Remember, no single YouTube video can replace professional guidance on legal or financial matters. So consult your physician if any medical considerations overlap. For instance, if you need immediate funds for health-related costs, the sense of relief you'll feel when everything is in order is immeasurable. Even if your loss is recent tackling, documentation is one of the best gifts you can give yourself in the long run. Step 4. Protect your health aggressively. In the throes of mourning, your self-care can vanish. You skip meals or fill up on junk food because cooking feels pointless. You might stop taking your prescriptions on time because you're too scatterbrained to keep track. Exercise becomes a distant memory because leaving the house requires more willpower than you possess. This downward spiral harms you physically and mentally, paving a dangerous path toward heart conditions, depressive disorders, or worse? According to Dr. Michael Greger, 2020, NutritionFacts.org, consistent and balanced eating maintains essential immune and cardiovascular function during stressful life events. Neglecting your nutrition can hasten health decline, making you more vulnerable to infections or exacerbating chronic illnesses like diabetes. Even mild dehydration can impact blood pressure regulation, which is already precarious when you're emotionally distraught. We also cannot ignore the role of physical activity. Even moderate movement, like a short neighborhood walk, can boost endorphins, those natural mood elevators, and help stabilize your cardiovascular health. Think back to the cautionary tale of Charles, whose arrhythmia was partly fueled by inactivity and poor nutrition. A small commitment to daily walks might have mitigated some of his symptoms until he could see a cardiologist. Sleep equally is non-negotiable. Chronic insomnia can disrupt hormone levels, impair cognitive function, and further weaken your heart. If anxious thoughts keep you awake, consider speaking with your doctor about mild sleep aids or learning relaxation techniques like progressive muscle relaxation. Some seniors benefit from setting up a bedtime ritual, reading a calming book or listening to gentle music to signal the body, it's time to wind down. One more must-have medical checkups. Grief can mask or mimic physical ailments, so seeing a doctor can be a vital reality check. Inform your physician about your loss. They can evaluate whether fluctuations in blood pressure, appetite, and sleep are purely grief-related or indicative of something more serious. Your doctor might adjust your medications or refer you to a counselor. In every case, remember that these suggestions supplement, not replace professional medical advice. Consistent health monitoring could prevent a small issue from spiraling into a life-threatening emergency. Step 5. Refrain from big decisions in the early stages. You'd be shocked how many widowed individuals uproot their lives within weeks of losing a spouse, selling the family home, moving across the country, or shredding decades of personal possessions. While the impulse is natural, painful memories can be too intense. The risk is that you're making irreversible choices in a state of emotional upheaval. The financial and emotional fallout can create even more trauma. Grief distorts perspective. What feels unbearable today might be more manageable after you've processed some of the shock. If you act on your most drastic impulses too soon, you could wind up regretting permanent decisions. I recall a 76-year-old named Bill who sold his house immediately after his wife's funeral and moved closer to his children. Within months, he loathed his new environment and missed the familiar network in his old neighborhood. Reversing his choice was impossible due to market changes and logistical hurdles. This doesn't mean you never sell the house or never relocate. Sometimes downsizing or moving to be near supportive family is the right long-term choice. The key is to pause, consult your physician if health factors are involved, and wait until you're beyond the initial wave of shock. Give yourself at least a few months. Some grief counselors recommend a full year before making life-altering decisions. This grace period offers clarity and a more stable emotional baseline. The same caution applies to financial transactions like large investments, estate changes, or switching banks. Talk to a trusted friend, financial advisor, or lawyer who has no personal stake in your decision. If you find that your anxiety or restlessness drives you to make hasty moves, channel that energy into something else, a small home project, volunteering, or journaling. Anything that keeps you occupied without gambling your future or adding new layers of regret. Understand that rushing to erase your spouse's presence by discarding their belongings can backfire emotionally. Many people purge closets and personal effects too quickly, only to regret it later. A methodical approach, sorting items in small batches perhaps, with a supportive friend, is generally less traumatic. Be gentle on yourself. Time dulls the edges of acute pain, making it easier to make decisions you can live with peacefully. Turham. Step 6. Rebuild your identity beyond we. The harsh reality is that losing a spouse means losing part of who you were. That sense of identity, whether you've been Mr. and Mrs. Smith for decades or a couple known for your shared hobbies, disappears when you lose your partner in daily life. Many seniors feel unmoored, unsure how to fill the hours or define themselves without the person who was always at their side. This identity crisis isn't superficial. It resonates in your psyche and can wreak havoc on mental health if left unchecked. Psychologists explain that a portion of our self-concept is tied to our loved ones. So when we're forced into widowhood, we need to rediscover who we are on our own. This transition can be painfully slow, but it's also an opportunity for growth. Some seniors find solace in resurrecting old passions, like painting or gardening, that they set aside long ago. Others realize they have interests their spouse didn't share, and they explore them for the first time, like traveling or joining clubs. For instance, Deborah, a 73-year-old retired teacher, spent most of her marriage supporting her husband's career. After he passed, she felt purposeless. Slowly, she delved into community theater, discovered a hidden talent, and found new friends who welcomed her. This didn't erase her grief, but it gave her a reason to keep waking up. Over time, that sense of meaning became a pillar of emotional and physical health. Rebuilding identity doesn't dishonor your spouse's memory. You're not moving on in the sense of forgetting them. Rather, you're creating an ongoing life that integrates their memory into a fresh reality. You might keep certain traditions alive, like cooking your spouse's favorite meal every Friday, but also forge new rituals for yourself. The crucial point is that you are an individual with your own future, not merely half of a pair that no longer exists. Grief support groups, therapy, or even journaling can guide you through this process. Who am I now is not a question you answer overnight. It's a question you live with, exploring piece by piece. Each step you take in discovering a renewed sense of self fortifies you against slipping into chronic despair. Identity reconstruction is the capstone of healing, giving you the resilience to face whatever challenges life brings next. The missing spark, a challenge to galvanize action. One dimension often overlooked is giving yourself a short-term challenge that combats the numbness. Yes, you're grieving, and yes, it's difficult to muster excitement, but setting a concrete time-bound goal can inject urgency into your daily routine, forcing you to stay connected to the world. Let's propose a 7-day identity boost specifically designed for seniors navigating loss. Each day for 1 week, you assign yourself a simple task that aligns with the steps we've discussed. Day 1 might be calling at least 2 people to check in, no matter how short the conversation. Day 2 could involve organizing one category of important papers or contacting an attorney to verify your will. Day 3 might focus on health plan and eat a nutritious meal. Consult your physician for any dietary restrictions. Day 4 might be a 20-minute walk. Day 5, reflect on a hobby you enjoyed decades ago. Write down one idea for reviving it. Day 6, commit to a full night's sleep by turning off electronics and taking a calming bath before bed. Day 7, do something symbolic to honor your spouse. Light a candle, listen to their favorite music, or place a small keepsake in a special spot. You can share this 7-day identity boost with your friends or online communities. This practical approach is more than a set of tasks. It's a framework to ensure each dimension of post-loss care, emotional, social, logistical, physical, and existential, is addressed. People often find that focusing on a daily mini-goal breaks the inertia and fosters progress. If you're feeling truly bold, you could extend it to a 30-day or 90-day challenge, adjusting tasks along the way to reflect your evolving needs. Case in point 1. 81-year-old widower Ed embarked on a personal 7-day challenge after losing his wife. He posted on a local seniors Facebook group each day, updating everyone on his small but meaningful achievements. By day 7, he felt more energy, had clearer direction with his finances, and started building a fresh support network among those who followed his posts. Ed reported fewer panic attacks and better sleep. These transformations didn't erase his loss, but they gave him renewed hope physically and psychologically. The crucial element is accountability, whether with a friend, a relative, or an online forum. Let someone know you're trying this challenge. Ask them to check in. This mutual support mechanism boosts your motivation and reminds you that you're not operating in isolation. Of course, if you have medical conditions, you must consult your physician before making any major changes to diet, exercise, or stress management techniques. Safety first always. Show it. Action plan, the all-in-one checklist. Let's consolidate these vital steps into an actionable checklist you can keep in a visible spot or share with loved ones. Call it your survival plan. After the unthinkable. 1. Feel your emotions. Schedule 15 or 20 minutes daily for emotional processing journal talk to a friend or sit quietly with your thoughts. Accept that tears and sadness are natural, not weaknesses. Sakaturin, if overwhelming, consider speaking with a grief counselor. 2. Reach out for connection. List 5 people or groups you can contact. Make at least one call or message per day. Investigate local or online grief support groups. Use technology video calls, social networks if meeting in person is difficult. 3. Assemble critical documents. Gather your spouse's will, insurance policies, financial records, IDs, and any other important paperwork in one secure folder. Make digital copies where possible and label them clearly. Consult a professional attorney or financial advisor to ensure completeness. 4. Safeguard your health. Maintain regular meals, plan simple balance options. Engage in mild physical activity, walk, or gentle stretching daily. Track your medications and schedule checkups with your physician to monitor blood pressure, heart health, etc. Avoid drastic decisions. 20. Wait several months or a year before selling property, moving, or major financial changes. Seek unbiased advice from professionals or trusted friends. Start small if you need a change. Rearrange furniture or redecorate a room instead of discarding your spouse's entire wardrobe immediately. Rebuild your identity. Explore an old hobby or discover a new one that sparks interest. Join local clubs, classes, or volunteer groups to expand your social world. Keep a personal journal to track your evolving thoughts and feelings. Tape this list to your fridge, your desk, or inside a cabinet you open often. In the fog of grief, you'll appreciate a simple reference that reminds you, I have a path, I'm not adrift. It's also an excellent tool for family members or friends who want to support you. They can check in asking, how are you doing with step 2 today? Or did you manage step 4 yet? This sense of shared accountability can keep you afloat when the waves of sorrow threaten to pull you under. Feel free to modify the checklist. Everyone's journey is unique, and you might need different resources or time frames. The essential point is to avoid drifting aimlessly in a sea of emotional and physical risk. Each item on that list is a small anchor, a tether that keeps you from being swept away by despair. It might seem overwhelming at first, but remember baby steps. Take one day at a time, and if you stumble, that's okay. Just stand back up and keep going. Ultimately, this is your life to reclaim. Even though your spouse isn't physically present, you owe it to both of you to maintain your well-being. In a sense, your loved one's memory can serve as motivation. By applying these strategies, you're not just surviving the loss. You're gradually paving a future that acknowledges their place in your past, but also respects your right to keep living. If anything feels too overwhelming, that's the moment to consult your physician or a mental health professional. Grief can morph into clinical depression or severe anxiety if left unchecked. Professional guidance provides tools and interventions that might be just the bridge you need to get from despair to acceptance. Never hesitate to reach out. This journey is challenging, but you don't have to go it alone. Call to comment. Have you ever noticed this sign? Comment, I feel it, if you relate. I'm safe if not, and add a question for the doctor. Your feedback matters. Sharing your experiences fosters a supportive community, helping others see that they aren't isolated in their grief or their concerns about health risks. Feel free to add any detail you think might help someone else, whether it's a personal strategy you used or a simple moment you found comfort in. If you're still unsure about these strategies, or perhaps you have unique circumstances, like pre-existing conditions or complicated family situations, drop a question. Let's keep the dialogue going. The broader our discussion, the more we learn from each other, forming a collective shield against the debilitating effects of sorrow and isolation. Remember, acknowledging what you're going through is a significant step in healing. Virality Boost additional case studies in 24-hour challenge. You might be wondering how everyday seniors apply these ideas in real life. Let's take Marjorie, a 75-year-old widow who dealt with her grief by ignoring it for 3 months. She lost 15 pounds without trying, started feeling dizzy spells, and nearly fainted multiple times. Her doctor realized she'd become dangerously undernourished. When she began a simple 24-hour challenge, calling a friend, eating 2 balanced meals, and writing down her emotions, she saw immediate, if modest, improvements. That momentum encouraged her to continue, eventually broadening her activities to volunteer at a local library. Another example is Stan, 80, whose spouse passed after a lengthy illness. He sank into bitterness, lashing out at friends who tried to help. It nearly destroyed his friendships. A neighbor convinced him to do a 24-hour reset commit to phone two old friends and apologize for his withdrawal. That one day of accountability broke his cycle of isolation. Over the following weeks, Stan joined a walking club at the senior center, made new connections, and saw an improvement in his emotional resilience. These stories are not miracles. They're living demonstrations that small, intentional steps can halt the downward spiral. A 24-hour challenge is something you can start anytime today, tomorrow, or next week. The idea is to pick a bite-sized goal: phone a friend, eat a full meal, organize one drawer of important documents, or walk for 20 minutes. If you do at least one positive action in the next 24 hours, you've begun shifting the narrative from helplessness to empowerment. Share your 24-hour challenge idea in the comments. Ask others to try it. Form mini support groups online or in your neighborhood, encouraging each other to complete daily tasks. This approach fosters accountability and makes the seemingly huge job of healing more approachable. People often discover that once they succeed in a single short-term challenge, they gain the confidence to address bigger hurdles. For additional inspiration, look at how organizations like Grief Recovery Networks encourage life tasks one day at a time. If day one is about emotional connection, day two is often about sorting personal papers. Day three focuses on physical well-being, and so forth. Over a month, the cumulative effect of these daily tasks can be life-changing. It's a methodical way to dismantle the chaos that often follows a spouse's death. Credibility and trust expert quotes. You might still be skeptical. Let's anchor this more firmly with expert insights. World Health Organization, WHO, 2017 Global Health Data. Older adults experiencing bereavement are at increased risk for psychological distress and physical health complications, including heightened vulnerability to cardiovascular events. Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, 2019 study on grief and aging. Among seniors, the aftermath of losing a partner correlates with a marked rise in stress hormones, which can exacerbate existing medical conditions. Early intervention and social support are key. Source to Dr. Michael Greger, 2020. NutritionFacts.org. Consistency in nutrition and moderate exercise can mitigate the harmful impact of stress on the immune system and cardiovascular function, particularly in the wake of traumatic life events. These statements come from reputable sources dedicated to public health and nutrition science. They aren't fringe opinions. They reflect a global consensus on how deeply grief can impact a senior's body. Even though the heartbreak is intangible, its effects on blood pressure, hormone levels, and emotional stability are very real. Remember that scientific validation isn't meant to alarm you. It's to encourage you to take proactive measures. The next time someone tells you, just be strong, or time heals all wounds, recall these expert findings. Yes, emotional resilience matters, but it won't spontaneously fix your physical health. Time alone doesn't heal if you spend it in isolation and neglect. Your body requires deliberate care. Your psyche needs structured support. Combining both emotional acceptance and physical maintenance allows you to reclaim your life more successfully. The moral is clear. The threat is real, but so is your power to confront it. You can choose not to be a passive victim of post-bereavement health risks. With knowledge from experts, the support of caring individuals, and your own determination, you can shape a new path that honors your spouse's memory without sacrificing your own well-being. Conclusion. Rapid-fire recap, invitation, and open question. Let's bring it all together in 3 rapid-fire points. First, grief is both emotional and physical. Avoid burying your feelings or neglecting your health. Second, connect and organize. Don't let isolation or unaddressed paperwork derail your stability. Third, plan your steps, but hold off on irreversible decisions until your mind is clear. If this message resonated, hit the like button. Share this script and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss future content that could safeguard your health. Spread the word among your friends, especially those who may be at risk of facing this unthinkable scenario. Your engagement helps us reach more people who desperately need these insights. Now, for a final thought to spark discussion, which part of your life do you think would be the hardest to rebuild if your spouse died tomorrow? Is it your sense of identity, your social circle, your daily routine, or something else entirely? We'd love to hear your reflections in the comments. By sharing, you might help someone realize they're not alone in their struggles, and that could be the beginning of their own healing journey.